The morning sun rose over Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, but the peaceful quiet was about to be shattered as two massive armies prepared to collide in a battle that would change the fate of a divided nation. The Confederate Army, led by General Robert E. Lee, had marched deep into Northern territory seeking a decisive victory on Union soil. Lee believed that a triumph here would break Northern morale, weaken the Union war effort, and possibly secure foreign recognition for the Confederacy, while the Union Army commanded by General George G. Meade stood ready to defend the heart of their country with fierce determination. Gettysburg was an ordinary small town until it suddenly became the stage for one of the bloodiest and most important battles in American history. The rolling hills, ridges, and fields around the town shaped the coming conflict, forcing soldiers to fight for control of strategic positions like Cemetery Ridge, Seminary Ridge, and Little Round Top, which would prove critical in the outcome of the battle. Thousands of men from both sides were ordinary farmers, laborers, and tradesmen who answered the call to arms filled with hope, fear, and patriotism, but many would never return home. The soldiers marched forward into a hell unlike any they had ever imagined. As the battle erupted, the roar of cannon fire shattered the silence, and the ground trembled beneath the thunder of charging troops. The sky became thick with smoke, and the air filled with screams and the relentless pounding of hooves and feet. Union troops quickly dug trenches and formed defensive lines on the high ground, determined to hold their positions against the relentless Confederate assaults. Wave after wave of Southern soldiers launched brutal attacks, trying to break through the Union lines, but time and again they were repelled by a stubborn and resourceful enemy. The fighting was fierce, and casualties mounted on both sides. Men endured unimaginable hardship, cold, hunger, and exhaustion, yet refused to yield. The stakes could not have been higher. This was more than a battle for territory. It was a fight to determine whether the United States would remain united or be torn apart by civil war. On these fields, the future of slavery, the survival of the Union, and the meaning of freedom itself hung in the balance. The 3 days of combat were marked by moments of extraordinary courage and sacrifice from leaders and common soldiers alike. Each side made desperate moves and counter-moves in an attempt to seize advantage. Lee gambled everything on a massive assault known as Picket Ass Charge that would either break the Union center or end in disaster. For the Union, the battle tested their resolve and leadership and their ability to hold the line against overwhelming odds. The outcome was not immediately clear, but by the final day, the tide began to turn. The Confederate forces suffered devastating losses and were forced to retreat, leaving Gettysburg as a symbol of Union resilience and a turning point in the war. The battle left more than 50,000 soldiers dead, wounded, or missing, making it one of the bloodiest in American history. The cost was staggering, but the victory boosted Northern morale and helped shift momentum away from the Confederacy. The Battle of Gettysburg came to embody the sacrifices made to preserve the nation and uphold the ideals of liberty and equality. It was a moment that defined the Civil War and set the United States on a path toward reunification and ultimately the abolition of slavery. Its legacy continues to be remembered as a powerful reminder of courage, sacrifice, and the enduring struggle for freedom. As the sun rose on the second day of battle, both the Union and Confederate armies prepared for another day of fierce fighting. The Union forces had established strong defensive positions on Cemetery Ridge and the surrounding high ground, while the Confederates aimed to seize these critical heights to turn the tide of the battle. General Lee recognized that controlling the high ground would give his army a significant advantage and ordered attacks on multiple fronts. The fighting began early with Confederate troops pushing hard against Union positions on the left and right flanks. The rugged terrain around Little Round Top became a focal point of the day's conflict. This steep, rocky hill overlooked much of the battlefield, and its capture would have allowed the Confederates to enfilade the Union lines with devastating artillery fire. Colonel Joshua Chamberlain and the 20th Maine Regiment were assigned the task of defending this vital position. Against overwhelming numbers, they fought with desperate courage and tactical ingenuity. Chamberlain ordered a daring downhill bayonet charge that surprised and repelled the Confederate attackers, preserving the Union flank elsewhere. Union soldiers repelled repeated Confederate assaults on other key points, including the Wheatfield Devil, Den, and the Peach Orchard. These brutal engagements produced horrific casualties and intense close-quarters combat. The landscape was littered with fallen soldiers' equipment and shattered trees. The battle was a test of endurance, leadership, and morale for both sides. General Meade coordinated the defense with skill, directing reinforcements to threatened sectors, while Lee continued to press his attacks, hoping to break the Union lines. Despite fierce Confederate determination, the Union held firm. The bravery displayed by the soldiers was extraordinary, from the junior officers rallying their troops to the rank and file fighting desperately to hold their ground. The second day of Gettysburg became a symbol of steadfastness and sacrifice. The battle was far from over, but the Union's ability to maintain control of the high ground proved decisive. It prevented the Confederates from gaining the upper hand and shifted the momentum in favor of the North. As dusk fell on July 2nd, weary soldiers on both sides prepared for what would be the most critical and bloody day of fighting. General Lee planned a massive assault on the Union center, aimed at breaking their lines and forcing a Confederate victory. The attack would later be known as Pickett's Charge, named after Major General George Pickett, who led one of the divisions in the charge. The Confederate troops gathered for the assault, knowing the odds were against them, but determined to achieve a victory that could end the war. The Union forces braced themselves for the impending attack, reinforced by fresh troops and strong artillery support. The night was filled with anxious anticipation and prayers as men prepared for the final showdown. The Battle of Gettysburg was no longer just a battle. It had become a test of wills, a clash of destinies that would shape the future of a nation. The third day of the Battle of Gettysburg began with an eerie calm as both the Union and Confederate armies prepared for what would become the most decisive and infamous moment in the Civil War. General Robert E. Lee was determined to break the Union lines and win a victory that could potentially end the war. He planned a massive assault targeting the center of the Union line held on Cemetery Ridge. Lee believed that by breaking through the center, he could shatter the Northern Army and force a retreat or surrender. The Confederate forces assembled thousands of soldiers from several divisions, including those led by Major General George Pickett, who was given the task of leading one of the principal charges across open fields towards the Union defenses. The assault required Confederate soldiers to cross nearly a mile of exposed terrain while under constant artillery and rifle fire, making the attack extremely perilous. Before the infantry charge began, Confederate artillery opened a heavy bombardment, attempting to weaken the Union defenses. But despite firing thousands of shells, many of the Union artillery pieces remained intact and ready to respond. The Union troops under General Meade were well entrenched and positioned on higher ground with strong defensive lines fortified by stone walls and natural ridges. The advancing Confederate soldiers moved forward in tight formations with their flags waving bravely despite the storm of fire aimed at them. The battlefield was engulfed in smoke. The booming sound of cannon and rifles mingled with the cries and shouts of charging men, creating a terrifying and chaotic scene. Many Confederate soldiers fell as they crossed the open fields, but the survivors pressed onward, reaching the stone wall that formed the heart of the Union defensive line. Here the fighting turned brutal and personal, as hand-to-hand combat erupted with men grappling with bayonets, rifles, and fists. Soldiers from both sides fought desperately for control of every inch of ground. The courage and determination displayed in these moments was extraordinary, but the Confederate forces were unable to break the Union line despite their valiant efforts. They suffered heavy casualties, with thousands killed, wounded, or captured, and after sustaining immense losses, they were forced to retreat back across the fields, leaving behind a devastating scene of death and destruction. Pickett's charge became symbolic of the bravery, sacrifice, and futility faced by Confederate soldiers during the Civil War. The failure of the charge marked a decisive turning point in the Battle of Gettysburg and effectively ended General Lee's campaign to invade the North. The defeat forced the Confederate Army into a retreat that would eventually lead to its gradual decline and loss of momentum in the war. The cost of the battle was staggering, with estimates of over 50,000 soldiers killed, wounded, or missing, making Gettysburg the bloodiest battle of the Civil War. The immense sacrifice made by both sides underscored the high human cost of the conflict and the deep divisions within the nation. The victory at Gettysburg bolstered Union morale and gave the North renewed hope in its struggle to preserve the United States and abolish slavery. It also cemented the reputation of the Union Army under General Meade as a capable force, able to withstand and repel determined attacks. The battle's legacy extended far beyond the immediate military outcome. It became a symbol of national sacrifice, unity, and the fight for freedom as articulated in President Abraham Lincoln's famous Gettysburg Address, delivered months later. Lincoln's speech reminded the nation of the ideals for which the soldiers had fought and died, and called for a renewed commitment to the cause of liberty and democracy. The battlefield itself became a sacred place commemorated by monuments, cemeteries, and memorials honoring those who gave their lives. The lessons learned at Gettysburg influenced military strategy, leadership, and the conduct of the war in its final stages. The determination and resilience shown by ordinary soldiers and commanders alike inspired generations and helped shape the identity of the United States. The Battle of Gettysburg stands as a testament to the courage endured in times of great adversity and the profound cost of civil war. It remains a poignant reminder of the fragility of union and the enduring hope for peace, reconciliation, and justice in a nation once divided. The aftermath of the Battle of Gettysburg left the fields soaked in blood and the air heavy with sorrow and uncertainty, as the once vibrant town and its surrounding countryside bore the scars of the bloodiest battle ever fought on American soil. General Robert E. Lee and his Confederate Army were forced to retreat from Pennsylvania back toward Virginia. Their ambitions for a decisive victory dashed, and their forces depleted and demoralized. The retreat was a grueling and painful march, fraught with exhaustion injury and the growing realization that the war was turning irrevocably against the South. The Confederate soldiers struggled not only with the physical toll of battle, but also with the psychological blow of failure, while the Union Army under General George G. Meade, though weary and battered, celebrated a hard-fought victory that secured their control of the crucial high ground around Gettysburg. This triumph revitalized the Northern cause, instilling hope and renewed determination among soldiers, leaders, and civilians alike who had grown fatigued by years of relentless conflict. Gettysburg was more than just a battlefield victory. It became a symbol of resilience, the will to persevere, and the fight to uphold the Union and abolish slavery. The strategic importance of the Union victory was undeniable. It prevented Lee's army from advancing further into the North, disrupted Confederate plans to pressure northern cities, and potentially draw foreign support for the Confederacy. The battle demonstrated the effectiveness of Union leadership and the critical role that terrain and preparation played in modern warfare. The massive scale of casualties at Gettysburg was staggering. Over 50,000 soldiers were killed, wounded, or missing, making it the deadliest engagement of the Civil War. The impact of these losses rippled through families, communities, and the nation as a whole. The town of Gettysburg and nearby areas transformed overnight into sprawling field hospitals and care centers where civilians, doctors, and nurses labored tirelessly to treat the wounded. The sights and sounds of suffering and death were seared into the memories of those who lived through them, bringing the brutal realities of war into sharp focus for many who had previously been distant from the front lines. The sacrifices made at Gettysburg served as a rallying cry, inspiring many in the North to renew their commitment to the war effort and to the cause of ending slavery and preserving the Union. The battle united a divided nation around a shared purpose and strengthened resolve to see the conflict through to a just conclusion. In the months following the battle, President Abraham Lincoln traveled to Gettysburg to dedicate the Soldiers' National Cemetery, where thousands of Union soldiers were laid to rest. It was here that he delivered his now immortal Gettysburg Address, a brief yet profoundly moving speech that honored the fallen and reframed the Civil War as a struggle not only for the survival of the nation, but for the very ideals of liberty, equality, and democracy that the United States was founded upon. Lincoln's eloquence inspired the nation and continues to resonate as a defining statement of American values. Gettysburg also left a lasting legacy on military strategy, and leadership commanders on both sides studied the battle, analyzing the successes and failures in order to refine their tactics and approaches to warfare. The importance of strong defensive positions, effective communication, and morale were lessons hard learned through the carnage. The bravery, courage, and endurance displayed by the soldiers of Gettysburg became a symbol of the human spirit's capacity to endure hardship and fight for a cause greater than oneself. The battlefield itself has been preserved as a national historic site, featuring monuments, memorials, and museums that commemorate those who fought and died. Their annual ceremonies and educational programs continue to honor their memory and teach new generations about the battle's significance. The story of Gettysburg embodies themes of sacrifice, unity, and hope that remain relevant today. It serves as a powerful reminder of the costs of division and war, as well as the enduring quest for peace, reconciliation, and justice in America. The battle's profound impact on the course of the Civil War and on American history as a whole ensures that its lessons and legacy will never be forgotten. Gettysburg stands as a testament to the courage of those who fought there, the sacrifices they made, and the unyielding pursuit of a more perfect union that continues to define the United States to this day. The Battle of Gettysburg was a decisive moment that profoundly altered the course of the American Civil War and shaped the future of the United States as General Robert E. Lee's Confederate Army retreated from the fields of Pennsylvania. The toll of the three-day conflict weighed heavily on both the victors and the vanquished. The retreat was slow and arduous, fraught with exhaustion and loss as the Confederates grappled with the reality that their ambitious campaign into the North had failed to achieve its objectives. Lee's army was weakened in numbers and morale and forced to abandon plans to invade further into Union territory. The Union Army, led by General George G. Meade, though battered, was emboldened by the hard-fought victory, securing control of the critical high ground around Gettysburg and demonstrating the resilience and capability of Northern forces. The victory at Gettysburg became a pivotal turning point as it marked the beginning of the decline of the Confederate cause, shifting momentum irreversibly to the Union side. The aftermath of the battle revealed the brutal human cost of the conflict, with over 50,000 casualties dead, wounded, or missing, the largest loss of life in any battle fought on American soil. The surrounding communities were overwhelmed as they transformed into makeshift hospitals and burial grounds, where civilians, doctors, and nurses struggled to tend to the injured and lay the fallen to rest. The sheer scale of suffering brought the war's realities to the forefront of the national consciousness, galvanizing public support for the Union war effort and reinforcing the resolve to see the conflict through to its conclusion. Gettysburg symbolized more than a military victory. It represented a test of the nation's endurance and commitment to the ideals of freedom, equality, and unity. The courage, sacrifice, and determination of the soldiers who fought there inspired generations and helped to shape the American identity in profound ways. The battle also had lasting implications for military strategy and leadership, influencing how commanders planned and conducted future engagements. The importance of terrain positioning, logistics, and morale were lessons etched into military doctrine through the experience of Gettysburg. The words of President Abraham Lincoln, delivered during the dedication of the Soldiers' National Cemetery, months after the battle, captured the essence of the conflict and its significance in American history. His Gettysburg Address eloquently reminded the nation of the purpose of the struggle and the need to honor the sacrifice of those who gave their lives. Lincoln's speech continues to resonate as a powerful call for unity, justice, and the ongoing pursuit of a more perfect union. The preservation of the Gettysburg battlefield through monuments, memorials, and educational programs ensures that the legacy of the battle remains alive, serving as a poignant reminder of the costs of division and war and the enduring hope for peace, reconciliation, and freedom. The story of Gettysburg endures as a testament to the human spirit, its capacity to endure hardship, fight for noble causes, and overcome profound adversity. It stands as a cornerstone of American history, embodying themes of sacrifice, unity, and the relentless pursuit of liberty that continue to inspire reflection and commitment to the ideals upon which the United States was founded. The lessons learned and sacrifices made at Gettysburg help define the nation's trajectory, ensuring that the memory of those who fought and died there would never be forgotten, and that the quest for freedom and justice would remain central to the American experience. The battle's impact reverberates through time, a powerful chapter in the ongoing narrative of a nation that emerged from civil war stronger, determined, and dedicated to the principles of democracy and equality. The courage and resilience displayed at Gettysburg serve as an enduring reminder of what can be achieved when a people unite in pursuit of a common destiny, transcending division and conflict to build a future grounded in hope and shared purpose.